right. No problem. Well, let's get things started. We've got a nice group here today. Thank you for joining us for Tech Tips Live. We are at the third Thursday, and as usual, that means we will be going over a topic of interest to all of you GainSeeker users out there. This month, we're going to be looking at real-time alerts using email and text and how you do that out of GainSeeker. I'm your host today, Phil Mason. You've seen me a lot of times here. I'm thinking next month it's about time to get Jen or somebody else on. I see Jen's attending today, so she could have, I suppose, hosted, but that's just fine. We'll get going, but you guys can hear from somebody else. Charles Min is joining me today as our technical resource. Thanks a lot, Charles. So just a quick introduction. We'll have Charles talk about our topic, obviously, today, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. So, as I said in the teaser email, you know, that thing we never want to hear. Did you hear about XXX? Did you hear about this that happened at that facility or that? You know, what we're trying to do is just work at that whole topic of alerts are a tool about getting information from the right place at the right time to the right people or groups. And that's what we work at helping all of our clients with. Adrian and Ian and I had a call this morning with a client, and it was about just that. You know, how do they know, or if a machine line is down, you know, what part of that machine is causing problems, or over time, if their OEE is lagging, what are the parts, what are the reasons? You know, let's see a Pareto of that. But also some of these real-time alerts. And Charles is going to cover the various ways those things happen, the various kind of levels of severity on that, and give us some talk about it a little bit conceptually, and then actually get into the software and show us how some of that works. So I will get out of the way, and Charles, it is all yours.
All right. So really, when I think about getting alerts out of GainSeeker, I'm really looking at giving you three main types of alerts here. So the first, informational. We've got something going on, and while it's not really anything that needs to be dealt with, you know, something has happened. You're getting a copy of a shift report. You're getting a copy of the end of the day report, something like that. There's really, you know, you just need that notification sent out to your group, sent out to supervisors, whoever it needs to be, and have it shared quickly and easily. Now, I have that note of needing the server edition for some automation. That really just facilitates things because it's a lot easier when you can set up that automated end of day or end of shift report. It's a lot easier when you have a dashboard that will automatically, you know, generate the data and then send that information out to the appropriate people. Directly within a GainSeeker inspection, we can set up alerts that trigger for warnings or for critical alerts. Warnings, you know, any type of real-time alarm, be it a spec failure or a trend alert, both of those kind of blur the line between warnings and critical alerts. To me, when I think of a warning, it's, hey, take a look at this before things get worse. You know, I'd say 99% of the real-time alarms that occur, it's more of a warning than something that's actually critical. Now, you know, a critical alert, you can, for those of you who are blessed to have PLCs in your machines and can send that sort of an information of, hey, the line's down, it's jammed up. That's something that could be considered much more critical. And so you want to get that information out as soon as possible. you don't have to set that up. So you don't have to worry about the operator telling the right people that something's down and losing time. So, but some of those real-time alerts can be considered critical. For our food service customers, collecting weights, anything that is below the MAV value, below the maximum allowed variance, that's a full stop on the line. And so that's considered critical to you guys. But how we set that up to make sure that that's set up properly. We have the real-time alarm stopping people from going on entering in data, but we also have that email alert or text alert to say, hey, this happened on the line. We need someone to take a look at it as well. Now, most of the times you're going to be setting up an email alert. It's just going to be sent out through your company email server. But sometimes you may want it to go to your phone. And there's always that divide of how much information is too much information. What really warrants me getting an email versus a text or a multimedia message with a picture attached to it? That really depends. We know that you can text your cell phone, putting in your cell phone number, depending on what carrier you have, you've got that information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and switch tacks. And I'm going to show you a demo that I've got here. Real quick, this is based out of our tour database. And I'm just going to throw together a quick inspection. I throw this inspection together, and I'm purposefully, oops, that's not where I wanted to go. That is not where I wanted that to go at all. Of course, I was testing this morning, and it worked just fine. There we go. Why did that hide? And of course, I hit the wrong one. There we go. So on this numeric input sub-inspection, we've got some data involved, pre-filling some numbers. As you can see, I've got real-time failures already set up. Hopefully, and of course, you can see here that they'll definitely trigger due to the red colors that you see. So when I submit it, it's already set up to email me. And once I get this email, I'll pull it up on my, move it over. Of course, it's going to take a moment. Now, the way I've set it up is I've got two emails here. I've got one for a specific, an error for a specific, or I've set it up such that one of the numeric inputs is going to always send me whatever the failure is, as well as the associated chart image that went along with it. I also, as part of the sub-inspection, have it set up a combined response failure so that it tells me all in one summary email, I've got multiple failures for numeric inputs. And for each one of them, I'm sending the charts that are associated with it. Here, and I'm just going to show the properties window. When you've got the sub-inspection properties window, the important one is that combined failure response. Now, by using that combined failure response, we're also assuming that your email server ports are set up, and you need to be sending with a valid username and password of someone on your system. Now, for those of you guys who have floor operators, where whoever's logged into that computer may not have an actual Outlook user or Active Directory user in your system, there may be a generic email address that IT can set up to send as that user, and there you go. There's your username and emails that are being sent. I have this, as I said. Now, the sub inspection allows you to set up a combined failure response, and then each numeric input has a check failure response property that you can say, hey, if there's a failure, real-time failure on this particular numeric input, send it to whatever the group or people are. And I strongly recommend setting up distribution lists wherever possible. They make it a lot easier to manage. That way, if more people need to be added to the distribution list, usually that's a lot easier to manage than having someone go in and edit a list of email addresses here. They're both equal. In some ways, they're both equally simple to manage, but for some people who just don't want to go in and change the inspection once it's been set up, the distribution list makes it a lot easier to manage the email side of things. Now, of course, outside these email alerts, I could have sent it to my phone, and because there are attachments, those attachments should come up without any issue. But at the same time, I want to make sure these email alerts are pretty bland. Using Python, we can always craft a more appropriate email alert that contains more information. Maybe it has a little bit, not just contains more information, but it is a little bit more tailored to what actually occurred, instead of being a generic, hey, this real-time failure occurred. So those are all things to keep in mind. We are, as I said, we're able to help craft a generic response or a specific response and set it up and make sure that you get the alerts that you need at the times you need it, and from the right, triggered by the right things.
So what you're showing here, Charles, is obviously kind of the out of the box that everybody has and has on the controls for inspections.
Correct.
Yeah. And so if you want to get fancier with the text and the content in the messages, that becomes something that with some Python extension can be done.
Correct. Yeah, okay. And much the same way, through use of Python, we can have any sort of not just the message be different, but being sent to different groups, different triggers. With the out of the box features, you really only get the ability to send to whatever email addresses are listed in that property. So you can't really say, hey, I want this group, unless you have two distribution lists set up, you can't really say, hey, I want group A to be able to get this email alert, but I also want group B to get a text alert, but only, but change that message ever so slightly. You'd have to have the distribution list set up first and foremost, but that's, again, something to really discuss with IT. What's the best way to have that be done? And, bring us in on that discussion as well. If you want our input, we can certainly assist, whether it's as a project or as support, we can certainly kind of point you down the right direction. But like I said, out of the box, it's a very generic response. If you want something more tailored, we go into the Python customization, and we can do a whole lot of things.
So it'd be the same thing with, like, right now, this is assigned to you. You would be getting the errors even if we had a second shift or a third shift, and you've already gone home and you're trying to sleep or whatever. With Python, you can do some of the things where it's like, hey, if it's first shift or it's between these hours, it goes here, and second shift, it would go here, and so on.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I have it sent to the entire distribution list, and if I'm not on the clock, I'm not paying attention to that email.
Right. Right. All right. Do you want to go back just briefly, Charles, and talk a little bit about your informational alerts?
Yeah.
And how what drives those a little bit?
Yeah. So as I said, informational. Something happens. Usually with something happening, and especially if it doesn't require your immediate attention, the end of shift report or end of day report. A lot of times you may want those automated. We have ways to automate, using the server edition. We have methods to generate an email version of a dashboard or a desktop, anything within GainSeeker, have it attached and sent out via email. So those, that's a good starting place. You may also want to have, based upon your, you may even have custom code that says every, hour or every X number of checks, I want to know what the average of the shift thus far for this product that I've measured. And that's really just informational. You can go look that up on, pull up the chart and look at it, but sometimes you want that information in an email as well. It's really just information to have at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I really can't think of any others any other basic informational items that could be used. Like I said, the most common one is just the end of shift report or end of day report that gets automatically generated and sent out. A lot of our customers recently, we've done a lot of dashboards or custom dashboards, and through these custom dashboards, we're sending out an email copy of them, so they are being generated, updated with the latest information, and right before it gets sent out, however many times it does. I think some of them are twice a day, some of them are twice a shift. It's always going to refresh with the latest data and send out a copy of that dashboard for the group to see.
Yeah. So I kind of had a question along those lines, and just for clarifying and some of the terminology we use. So we also talk about scheduled tasks. And so, is this in that realm of scheduled tasks and something like automating that daily alert or a daily report?
Sure. Now, scheduled task refers to the Windows scheduled task. In order to set up any of the GainSeeker automation, be it, to set up, hey, here's my dashboard. I want this to automatically generate this dashboard, send it out to this group of people whenever it's run. So a lot of times what we will do is we will, whether it's through a batch file or using the command line arguments to automatically do that, we wanted to having it set up as a Windows scheduled task allows us to repeat that on a schedule. So if it needs to be done at 6, the previous day's previous day's report gets generated at 6 a.m. every morning and emailed out. That's when it happens. You have it done once a day. 6 a.m. the server runs the command line arguments that will generate that dashboard and email it out to the group. And it's very hands-off. So the automation part of it is, that without the server edition, we can't use some of those command line arguments to generate that dashboard and automatically email it out. We'd have to manually pull up that dashboard, send it to a PowerPoint or send it to email, and then email it out manually.
Okay. All right. Good. Do you want to say anything more about hooking up email systems and kind of the whole SMTP, or do we just try and leave that to IT?
We can certainly assist with whatever, with the different types of groups out there. There are a couple of caveats that we've been noticing, and me especially, having worked with this. So with on-prem Exchange servers, really straightforward. Use your SMTP Exchange endpoint. Everything probably wasn't authenticated, but it may be. Now, let me step back a bit. GainSeeker has the ability to either send automatically through Outlook or send using our built-in SMTP client, or built-in mail client. Using Outlook for an automated email doesn't make a lot of sense, largely because the operators that are putting in the data, especially if it's a shared computer, there may not be an Outlook profile or Outlook, even an email address set up on that computer. So a lot of times what we're sending as is what I refer to as a dummy email address. It's an email address that comes from your company, has a very specific name so that it makes sense who it's from, but it's not attached to an email. It's not attached to an actual mailbox. So it's essentially a no reply type email address. Anything that gets sent to it gets bounced by the server. Back in the on-premise days, this wasn't a huge issue because your local Exchange server would take care of that. Now, by moving everything to Office 365, in the interest of security, they want everyone to be authenticated while sending, when sending an email. So that has complicated some things. Actually, it's complicated a lot of things. The big thing with it is that it changes where we need to point outgoing email to. Office 365 has what's called an MX record, mail exchange record, and that has been the point that allows us to send from these unauthenticated emails or unauthenticated email accounts, email users, and then therefore send it internally to your network.
Okay, excellent. Well, I just threw it out there on the chat for any of those of you who are on there. So James at Silgan, generic users don't have email, so confirming what we're saying. I was just kind of curious of those of you who are on, what your response, what kind of is the practice in general, and I could obviously see where a lot of perhaps shop floor operators wouldn't necessarily have a corporate type of email setup. Other questions? We've had a lot of good conversation here. Anything else? Please feel free to put it there in the chat and we will see if we can't get them answered for you. Otherwise, we might just wrap up a couple minutes early. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Charles, while we wait and see if anybody else has any other questions. So our next Tech Tips Live, we have 2 more left this year on November 18th. we will be talking about templates to inspections. And, this is an ongoing conversation. Some of you who are newer clients, you're like, what's a template? Glad you didn't, it's one of the older ways we used to collect data, and we still have a lot of long-term clients who use them very extensively. And it's a perfectly fine way to do things, but it will end as a 32-bit part of the software at some point. Microsoft won't be supporting that, and so we are transitioning people, helping them work towards inspections. And so we'll be talking some more about what it takes to make that change, and also helping everyone understand it's not a one-to-one kind of a conversion. They're both data entry types of setups, but they do operate a little differently. And you also have a lot more capabilities with inspections. So if you're using a lot of templates, there are things you're missing out on, and some new features in the software that don't really come into play until you start using inspections. So be a lot of information in that one, and hope you can make it. And then in December, we will be we will do our first ever kind of Hertzler roundtable, and we're going to have some of our field people, maybe some development, and we will have a roundtable of topics and go through some of the big trends we saw as we were out working in the field, working with a number of our different clients, and also talk about the future. So something a little different. I'm looking forward to our December Tech Tips Live of that roundtable, and I think we're talking about having a little longer time period, like maybe more like 45 minutes, so that we have a little more time to cover things. So looks like we don't have anything else. As Andy noted, and James, they don't have generic emails. So yeah, this is important, and there are some tricks or little nuances getting it set up, but it can be done. We've worked on it. And Jen, glad you're excited about next month's topic, and maybe you can be host, right? So hey, thank you all so much for joining us for this month's Tech Tips Live. Great to have you here. We will have a recording posted of this here shortly, because I did record it this month. Last month I failed. That's on me. But we will have the recording up here in a couple of days. So if you have other people in your company you want to share that with, you're welcome to do that. So thanks again. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and rest of the week, and we'll see